Hey, what is going on, everybody? It has been a minute since my last video, but you guys know I gave you the heads up that I was going to be out of town visiting my family and attending a friend's wedding last week, and then I had over a 9-hour delay at the Atlanta airport, which was a nightmare. So that kind of threw off my plans to get you guys a video earlier this week, and I had some writing commitments over the past couple days. So, anyways, I'm back. If you guys forgot, my plan for you guys over this next couple of weeks, right before fantasy football drafts really ramp up, is I'm going to give you guys my tiers for the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. And then my other plan is, as I always do, is I'm going to be giving you guys my top streamable defenses to leave your draft with for week one. And I will be pumping those out over these next 2 weeks. Today, I'm going to be diving into my quarterback tiers. So yeah, let's just go ahead and dive right into this video. My first tier I'm going to be speaking about is these are quarterbacks that I trust to draft high tier. What I mean by that is I'm willing to select them as high as I usually don't like to take a quarterback until maybe the fourth round, maybe the third if I'm really high on them and I don't like the running backs and wide receivers that are available around then. So with that being said, these are pretty easy. I don't have to tell you guys really why you should draft a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a Lamar Jackson. Maybe there is some concern over Jalen Hurts because of the reported controversy between him and Nick Sirianni, but there's just so much talent in that offense that I'm willing to put trust in Hurts, and especially because of how high of a value he brings with his rushing floor. Obviously, CJ Stroud is coming off one of the best rookie performances by a quarterback in NFL history. And then they get Stephon Diggs. They got Tank Dell, who he connected with a touchdown in last night's preseason game. So, yeah, you know why you should be able to draft CJ Stroud. Now, there may be some concerns over Joe Burrow and Dak Prescott. I do understand that, but a couple things on those guys. I always will trust Joe Burrow. I feel like this is their last part of this offense's window because I do expect T. Higgins will be on a different team next year. But they still got T. Higgins. They still got obviously Jamar Chase in the passing attack. They brought in Mike Gesicki at the tight end position. There's this kid named Andre. Not Andre, but I always mispronounce his name. I should have looked it up. He's in his second year, wide receiver that they drafted last year, and I just think that when you got Joe Burrow, I just think he gives you a high floor at the quarterback position, so I'm always willing to trust them. And then with Dak, he's entering a contract year. He doesn't. He on his current contract, he has it set where the Cowboys can't franchise tag him. So I expect Dak Prescott is going to ball out this year. So whether it is the Cowboys he re-signs with or it's with a different team, he gets a record-breaking type of deal. And then the other thing with the Cowboys too is I really don't trust their rushing attack with Zeke Elliott and Rico Daldo. I'm not saying those guys are bad by no means, but I just think they're going to lean into the passing attack, which should give a higher floor for Dak Prescott this year. Now, for those that are unaware, I always like to look at who's been the most productive players over the last 3 seasons. I'm not going to go into the certain stats. I'm just going to, what I also do is I try to find 3 to 4 different players that qualify for certain stats over the last 3 years. And these guys, I'm going to go over these stats that are pretty notable about them. Now, Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Dak Prescott, they are among only 4 quarterbacks with at least 25 regular season games where they finished with at least 215 passing yards and 2+ passing touchdowns since 2021. Another notable stat, Josh Allen, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts, they are the only quarterbacks that have at least 20 regular season games with 210 plus passing yards and 20 plus rushing yards since 2021. Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts are among 4 quarterbacks that average over 225 passing yards per game and 20 rushing yards per game. A minimum of 17 starts to qualify for that stat since 2021. A couple more stats on these group of players. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson are among 4 quarterbacks that have at least 55 passing touchdowns and 10 plus rushing touchdowns since 2021. And lastly, Joe Burrow and Dak Prescott are among 4 quarterbacks that have at least 11 1,000 plus passing yards, 80 plus passing touchdowns, and less than 35 interceptions in the regular season since 2021. So that's why I'm very comfortable with drafting one of these guys. And they're set them and forget them quarterbacks, in my opinion. The only way they come out of your lineup is if an unfortunate injury would happen, or if they are on their bye week. There are quarterbacks where if I draft them, I don't plan on having a backup quarterback option on my bench. Moving into this next tier, these are quarterbacks I'm willing to take the leap tier. So what I mean by this is these are quarterbacks that I could see finishing as the quarterback one. By the end of the season, the first player, Kyler Murray, obviously he's proven himself as a fantasy option. He just has to reprove himself and re-earn the trust of some people, because obviously some people out there do have concerns over Kyler Murray. Personally, I don't. I think he actually brings a high floor because of his rushing ability. And one notable stat with Kyler Murray is he is one of those 4 quarterbacks that average over 225 passing yards per game and 20 rushing yards per game since 2021. Now, Anthony Richardson, we got to see a brief stint of what he can bring as a fantasy quarterback. He's a guy that, with his rushing floor and what he flashed as a passer, if he can put it all together and stay healthy for all 17 games, I could easily see him finishing as the QB1 by the end of the season. And now I will say this, with Anthony Richardson's health concerns, I would maybe draft one of these quarterbacks from the upcoming tiers I'm going to talk about, just to have as a backup option. But I will say this: if I draft Anthony Richardson, he will be in my lineup starting in week 1. Last guy, Jordan Love, we got to see what he could do last year. He really came along over the second half of the schedule. We saw what he did against the Cowboys in the playoffs last year. And I think he's going to continue to ascend as a talented quarterback in this league. And then what I really like about Jordan Love is he has a plethora of receiving options. He's got like 5 or 6 solid wide receivers, which means he's got plenty of guys to spread the ball around to. If any of those guys have to leave at any point in the season because of injury, you don't have to worry about the floor dropping for Jordan Love. And he also has a couple pair of tight ends in Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft that he can utilize in the passing attack as well. They drafted Marshawn Lloyd, who is a good receiving back. Josh Jacobs is an underrated receiving back, which is why I think Jordan Love not only gives you a high floor this season, but he offers that high ceiling where he could potentially finish as a quarterback 1. But these are 3 guys though, I would not be surprised if they're in the top 10 quarterbacks in fantasy points by the end of the season. Moving into this next tier of quarterbacks, these are quarterbacks that can at least get me through the first half tier. What I mean by that is I think these are quarterbacks that could not easily, but these are quarterbacks that I would not be surprised where if they put it together for the full schedule, where maybe they can crack inside the top 12 quarterbacks and total fantasy points by the end of the year. But these are also quarterbacks that maybe I do see where they kind of have a cap ceiling, whether it's because of their age. I could see them potentially getting hurt at some point of this year, or maybe I do have some concerns over the sustained offense throughout the season. Justin Herbert is normally a guy I would have in the quarterback I can trust draft high tier, but with the change of the offense, with probably more than likely going to more of a run-heavy offense, him losing Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and having a unproven wide receiver core, and that he has that plantar fasciitis, I think that's what he has. He's expected to start the year, but that's like an injury that can carry into the season. So if that gets worse, he might have to miss time. So that's why I put him on top of this tier. Now, a couple stats that before I go into stats, I want to just kind of run down the list. Trevor Lawrence is a guy where we're kind of just waiting. He's like on the cusp, right, of being there. He just has to put it all together. So there's just some question marks about that offense. So that's why I have him in this tier. I trust him where I can get him as a placeholder. Maybe I would draft him as a backup to Anthony Richardson, just in case Anthony Richardson were to get hurt. Stafford, Rodgers, and Cousins, those are all veteran quarterbacks where if everything hits right, I could see them finishing in the top 12 quarterbacks by the end of the season. But again, you have to have concern over their age, over their history, especially Rodgers and Cousins. They are coming off torn Achilles. How are they going to look after that? It could something pop up with their injury history. Jared Goff's just a high floor quarterback. I don't really see him with a high ceiling as a fantasy quarterback because he doesn't really run the ball. He doesn't really utilize his legs. But he still is going to be in that high power Lions offense where I think he can help you win weeks throughout the season. And maybe maybe he's a guy you can like start at the beginning of the season while you maybe wait for one of these guys I'm about to mention in the next tier. And then Brock Purdy, he was actually a very solid fantasy quarterback last year. But the reason why I have him in this tier is just Brandon Ayuk might be getting traded here soon. Christian McCaffrey's already hurt. George Kittle and Deebo Samuel are great players, but both those guys have their injury history where they do have to miss time. So I'm still, put me in the category of those type of people where I still have my questions about what does Brock Purdy look like if you start to take away these weapons in this San Francisco 49ers offense? And if you start to take away the guys that are in the passing attack, I kind of see this being more of a run-heavy offense where Purdy's not going to give you those weeks that he did last year. But I do trust him where he could at least get me through the first half of the year, or at least the first 4 weeks, while I maybe wait for some quarterback on my bench that offers me more high upside that I just want to wait to see him prove himself before I slide him in. Before I move into the next tier, some of these quarterbacks did pop up on my notable stats. Justin Herbert is one of the 4 quarterbacks since 2021 that has at least 25 regular season games with at least 215 plus passing yards and 2 plus passing touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence is actually one of the 4 quarterbacks over the last 3 years that has at least 55 plus passing touchdowns and 10 plus rushing touchdowns. That's the one thing I do like about Lawrence. He's underrated as a runner. Does give you a little bit of a higher floor because of his rushing ability. And lastly, Justin Herbert and Kirk Cousins are among the 4 quarterbacks that have at least 11 plus passing yards, 80 plus passing touchdowns, and less than 35 interceptions in the regular season since 2021. The next tier of quarterbacks are my upside late round quarterback tier. Now these guys are Caleb Williams, Tua Tagovailoa, and Jaden Daniels. All 3 of those guys were in my quarterbacks to draft late tier video, which I spoke about I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago. If you guys haven't not watched that video, please go back and watch it because I don't want to sit here and rehash everything. Obviously, Caleb Williams is in a good situation as a rookie. Tua Tagovailoa, he's got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. They got OBJ, and they got some receiving backs, which is why I do like him. Again, I'm not going to sit here and talk about it too long because I already talked about these guys. And then Jaden Daniels, right before I hopped on to record this video, he had a nice pass in his preseason game, and he ran the ball in on a quarterback read. So his rushing ability is why I'm pretty high on Jaden Daniels. I will say this. If I draft Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, I would not be opposed to starting them week 1. But if you wanted to wait for those 2 rookies to prove themselves, maybe you do draft one of the quarterbacks I just spoke about in the previous tier. Put those guys in your lineup until Jaden Daniels and Caleb prove themselves as fantasy options as rookies. The final 2 guys, I included Will Levis and Justin Fields. Will Levis, he did have some good flashes last year as a rookie, and then they just have a lot of receiving options. And now they're all a lot of older guys, but they got DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd. We'll see if I forgot the kid's name, the first round wide receiver for Treylon Burks. We'll see if he can emerge. But I just and then they got Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. Those guys are more receiving backs than true running backs. So that's why I think if everything could click for the Tennessee offense, also Will Levis could be fantasy relevant at some point in the season. But if I were to draft Will Levis, I would leave him on my bench and maybe draft one of the guys in the previous tier. Justin Fields is not expected to, well, we'll see, because Russell Wilson's dealing with a calf injury. They believe he came back to practice this past week, but it sounds like everything that I'm hearing that Russell Wilson probably is going to be the starter week 1, but obviously Russell Wilson has to prove himself and hold that quarterback position. And the reason why I have Justin Fields in here is just because of his rushing ability, because of how much he can run the ball. That gives him a high floor as a fantasy option. And then they got the Arthur Smith offense, which does prefer to run the ball. And I would expect if Justin Fields ends up in the lineup at some point in the season, they're going to utilize his legs to that offense's advantage. Now, maybe you don't have to draft Justin Fields. Maybe he's a guy you can pick off the waivers, but there might be Steelers fans in your leagues that are going to want to draft him, leave him on the bench, and maybe put him in at some point of the season. So yeah, if you were to draft Justin Fields, I would draft one of the quarterbacks in the previous tier I spoke about, and then slide Justin in your lineup if he ends up coming into the lineup. Last two guys, because I am doing my top. I forgot to mention I'm doing my top 24 quarterbacks entering this season. These are placeholder quarterbacks for the upside quarterbacks tiers. Meaning, if you were not to land one of the guys, one of the quarterbacks from the quarterbacks that can get me through the first half tier, maybe you draft a Baker Mayfield or a Deshaun Watson, and maybe pair them with one of the rookie quarterbacks, or maybe a Will Levis or Justin Fields. These guys don't get me too excited, but with Baker, he still has Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Cade Otton in the passing attack. So I feel like Baker could at least get you through the first month before you can make a switch over to an upside quarterback. Obviously, you got these concerns over Deshaun Watson. He has not looked like himself like he did when he was back with Houston in 2020 or before 2021. But if everything could click for Deshaun Watson, they got a lot of things in that Browns offense that can make him succeed. Amari Cooper, we'll see if Jerry Jeudy can click, and then obviously they got David Njoku, which is why, and then I also do like their offense, because we saw what they could do with Joe Flacco last year. So that's why I'm saying if everything could click for Deshaun, maybe he could end up being a guy that you can trust. But I think him and Baker are just guys where it's like if everybody in your league is drafting like two quarterbacks and you kind of get screwed on your plan of drafting an upside quarterback, and you wanted to maybe get a different quarterback to pair with your upside quarterback, these are two guys maybe I would draft and see how it unfolds for both of them. So yeah, that is my video for my quarterback tiers heading into the season. My top 24 quarterbacks broken into tiers. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, so you guys can make sure you do keep up with all my content that will be coming out throughout this month and throughout the entire season. Next video will be my running back tier video. I am planning on getting that out to you guys Tuesday night at some point. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or concerns, you can always shoot me a DM. You can get in the comment sections. I always try to get back to you as soon as possible. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy your day, your night, your week, your weekend, whenever you're watching this. I'll talk to you soon. Peace out.